The stars looked different when you knew they held enemies. Commander Zixthara stood on the bridge of the Veil of Stars and watched the blue dot that was Earth spin slowly on her main screen. 3 different alien races had tried to conquer that small planet in 2 years, and all 3 had failed badly. The reports made no sense to her. Humans had no plasma weapons or energy shields like other space races. They used metal bullets and chemical explosives that any first-year military student would laugh at. Their ships moved slowly and their armor was thick but simple. Yet somehow they had beaten the crystal warriors of the Zarian Empire, the bioweapons of the Vortex Swarm, and the machine armies of the Keldon Collective. Jake Morrison kicked a piece of broken alien metal across the street and watched it bounce off a burned building. New Geneva looked like hell after the latest attack, but his people were already working to fix it. Human workers moved side by side with the few Zarian prisoners they had taken, lifting heavy stones and clearing debris from the roads. Amy Chun walked up to him with a data pad in her hands. She was tired but smiled anyway because that was just how Amy was. She had led the final charge that broke the Zarian battle line 3 days ago and saved the city. Now she was helping plan the cleanup like it was just another day at work. "The alien ship parts are really interesting," she said and showed him the screen. "Luis thinks we can use their crystal tech to make better communication systems. The prisoners have been helping us understand how it works." Luis Rodriguez appeared from behind a pile of rubble with a Zarian warrior walking next to him. The alien looked like a living piece of blue crystal with arms and legs. It should have been scary, but Luis was treating it like an old friend. They were both carrying tools and talking about something technical. "This is Thexal," Luis said when he reached them. "He used to be a ship commander, but now he wants to help us rebuild. He says his people never saw anything like how we treat prisoners before." The crystal being made a sound like wind chimes, and Luis nodded like he understood perfectly. "He says most races just kill their enemies or make them slaves. The idea of letting them choose to help is new to him." Jake looked at the alien warrior who had been trying to kill them just days ago. Now it was helping fix the damage from its own attack. This was happening all over the city. Former enemies working next to humans like they had always been friends. Underground in a secret lab, Peter Walsh stared at pieces of alien technology spread across his work table. His partner Karen Mills was running tests on a strange device that looked like it was half machine and half living tissue. They had been studying alien tech from all 3 invasions and finding amazing things. "The Vorthic biocomputers are incredible," Karen said as she looked through her microscope. "They think and feel almost like animals, but they can process information faster than our best systems. And look at this." She showed Peter a screen full of data. The Keldon machines left behind some kind of translation matrix. "If we can figure out how it works, we might be able to talk to any alien race we meet." Peter picked up a crystal fragment from the Zarian attack. It was still warm and seemed to glow with its own light. "The really amazing thing is how all these different technologies work together. It's like they were meant to be combined." Far above Earth, hidden on the dark side of the moon, something watched and recorded everything. The Hegemony Council had sent observers to study the human problem before deciding what to do about it. Field researcher Quindle had been watching for weeks and sending reports back to his commanders. The reports were not what anyone expected. Humans did not act like other space races. They did not kill all their enemies or take their technology by force. Instead, they offered food and medical care to prisoners. They asked questions about alien cultures and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. Most strange of all, they gave their enemies the choice to leave or stay and help. Junior Observer Kexpree was having trouble understanding what she was seeing. Her people had rules about warfare that had never changed. You fought until one side was completely destroyed. The winner took everything and the loser died. There was no middle ground and no mercy because mercy was weakness, but humans seemed to think mercy was strength. They treated their enemies better than most races treated their friends. And somehow this made their enemies want to stop fighting and start helping instead. The human defense strategy makes no logical sense, Quindle said as he reviewed the latest recordings. They spend more resources caring for enemy wounded than for their own weapons research. They give prisoners access to sensitive information and technology. By all military doctrine, they should have been conquered easily. Kexpree watched a human child playing with a young Zerion in what used to be a battlefield. The crystal being was teaching the human child how to make light patterns while the child showed the alien how to draw pictures in the dirt. Maybe their military doctrine is different than ours, she said quietly. Back on Earth, Jake Morrison stood in the command center and looked at reports from around the world. Every major city had small groups of former alien enemies now working with human teams. They were sharing knowledge, helping with repairs, and slowly becoming part of human society. Amy Chun brought him the latest intelligence report. Our deep space sensors are picking up a big ship moving toward our solar system. It's not like anything we've seen before. Much bigger than the invasion fleets. Jake nodded and looked at the stars through the center's big window. He knew this day would come. The 3 failed invasions had probably attracted attention from whoever was really in charge out there. Soon Earth would face its biggest test yet, but as he watched, Luis Rodriguez walked by with 2 Zerion engineers and a Vorthic biospecialist, all of them laughing at some shared joke. Jake felt something he had never felt before a battle. He felt hope. Humans had found something that no other race in the galaxy seemed to have. They had found a way to turn enemies into friends. The question was whether it would be enough when the real war began. 3 months had passed since the last attack, and the big alien ship had finally arrived. The Wanderer's gift looked like a floating city as it moved past Earth's moon and took position in the dark space behind it. Field researcher Quindle watched Earth through his instruments and tried to make sense of what his team was seeing. The humans knew they were being watched. Their primitive radar systems had spotted the hegemony ship the moment it entered their solar system. But instead of attacking or hiding, they had sent a simple radio message saying, "Welcome to our neighborhood. Please let us know if you need anything." Quindle had been studying alien races for 200 years and had never received a welcome message from a species under observation. Most races either tried to destroy the observation ship or begged for mercy. Humans seemed to think having alien watchers was perfectly normal. Junior observer Kexpree spent her days monitoring human communications and trying to understand their military structure. What she found confused her more each day. Captain Morrison's defense forces were not really an army in any sense that galactic military doctrine would recognize. The humans had soldiers from dozens of different countries all working together under one command. Even stranger, they had alien soldiers too. Former Zerion warriors trained human pilots how to use crystal technology. Vorthic bioengineers worked in human hospitals using their natural abilities to heal people. And strangest of all, humans listened to advice from their former enemies and actually used it. Amy Chun was now in charge of something called the Integration Protocol. Kexpree watched through hidden cameras as Amy led meetings where humans and aliens planned joint operations. The alien participants were not slaves or prisoners. They spoke freely, argued when they disagreed, and seemed to be treated as equals. "The Zerion crystal ships are much faster than our fighters," Amy said during one meeting that Kexpree recorded. "Vexel suggests we modify our engines with crystal resonance chambers. It won't make us as fast as their ships, but it will help." The crystal warrior Vexel stood up and activated a holographic display. He showed technical drawings that would normally be classified military secrets. The resonance pattern must be tuned to match human brain frequencies, he said in heavily accented but clear English. Crystal technology responds to thought patterns. Human thoughts are different from Zarian thoughts, so the tuning must be different. 2. Luis Rodriguez raised his hand. Well, this let us understand crystal computer systems better too. We have been trying to decode the navigation data from the ships we captured. Yes, Lexel said, and his crystal body flashed with colored lights that Kexpri had learned meant he was pleased. Crystal computers store information in light patterns. Once your pilots learn to think in harmony with the crystals, they will be able to access all stored data. Kexpri paused the recording and stared at the screen. A former enemy was not just helping humans understand captured technology. He was teaching them how to access military secrets that could be used against his own people. And he seemed happy to do it. On Earth, Peter Walsh was having the breakthrough of his career. The translation matrix from the Keldon machines was finally starting to make sense. Karen Mills worked beside him, running tests on biocomputer samples from the Vorthok, while alien advisors from both races offered suggestions. The key is that all three technologies use different methods to achieve the same goal. Peter explained to a mixed group of human scientists and alien engineers. Zarian. Crystals store information in light patterns. Vorthok biocomputers use genetic sequences, and Keldon machines use quantum states. But underneath, they are all doing the same basic thing. A Vorthok biospecialist that Luis had started calling Doc, because its real name was unpronounceable, gestured with one of its tentacles. The human suggestion to combine all three systems is unprecedented, it said through a translation device. Our scientists never considered that alien technologies could work together. Karen looked up from her equipment. That's because your scientists never had enemies who became friends. We are not trying to steal your technology or copy it. We want to understand it so we can build something new that works for everyone. The alien that Doc had brought from the Vorthok prisoner group moved closer to examine Karen's work. The biocomputer hybrid you have created responds to human thoughts but maintains Vorthok efficiency. This should be impossible, but it works perfectly. Hidden. In her observation post, Kexpri watched these impossible scenes play out day after day. Humans did not just defeat their enemies and take their technology. They invited their enemies to help improve the technology and make it work better for everyone. The former enemy aliens were not being forced to help. They wanted to help because humans treated them with respect and kindness. But the most shocking discovery came when Kexpri detected humans trying to contact her observation post directly. Amy Chun appeared on her communication screen one morning and spoke directly to the hidden cameras. "We know you are watching us, and that's okay," Amy said with a smile. "We understand that you need to study us before deciding what to do. But we notice that your ship is having problems with radiation exposure from being so close to our moon. We have developed some shielding technology that might help." The message included detailed technical specifications for radiation shielding that would indeed solve the problems the Hegemony observation team was having. Humans were offering to help the very aliens who were spying on them and planning their possible destruction. Quindle stared at the message for hours before showing it to his team. They are either the most sophisticated psychological warfare specialists in the galaxy, or they genuinely want to help everyone they encounter, including their enemies. Kexpri found herself hoping it was the second option. She had started learning human languages in her spare time and reading their literature and history. Humans had fought terrible wars among themselves, but they had also shown incredible kindness to enemies and strangers. Their own history was full of former enemies becoming friends and working together. The final surprise came when Jake Morrison himself sent a personal message to the observation post. He appeared on screen in his military uniform, but his expression was calm and friendly rather than threatening. "I know you have to make a report about us to your leaders," he said. "When you do, please tell them that we are not looking for a fight. We have learned that former enemies can become the best friends and strongest allies. If your people want to talk instead of fight, we would be happy to meet you." The message ended with coordinates for a neutral meeting location and an invitation for the observation team to visit Earth as guests rather than spies. No military leader in galactic history had ever voluntarily invited enemy observers to examine their defenses. Cax Pri made a decision that would change her life. She sent a coded response to the human transmission using a frequency that only Jake Morrison's team would detect. The message was simple, but it broke every rule of hegemony military conduct. "I would like to learn more about your way of thinking. Can we talk?" The response came back within an hour. "Of course. When would you like to start?" As Cax Pri prepared for her first conversation with a human, she wondered if she was about to become another example of an enemy who chose to become a friend. The thought should have terrified her, but instead it filled her with an emotion she had never felt before. Hope. Jake Morrison sat in a small room deep underground and talked to an alien who was supposed to be his enemy. Cax Pri appeared on his screen as a shimmering hologram, her form shifting between colors like liquid light. She had been talking to human teams for 2 weeks now, and each conversation taught both sides something new. "Your military tactics make no sense according to everything we know about warfare," Cax Pri said. But her tone was curious rather than critical. "You spend more resources on enemy wounded than most races spend on their own soldiers. Why do you do this?" Jake leaned back in his chair and thought about how to explain something that seemed obvious to humans but apparently shocked everyone else in the galaxy. "Because they stop being enemies once we help them. Look at Vexal. He tried to kill us 6 months ago, and now he is teaching our children mathematics. That Vorthik that Luis calls Doc is working in our hospitals saving human lives. But they could betray you," Cax Pri said. "They could steal your technology or send information to their home worlds." "They could," Jake agreed, "but they don't want to. When someone shows you kindness when they could show you cruelty, it changes how you think about them. When someone trusts you when they have every reason not to, you want to be worthy of that trust." Across the city, Amy Chen was demonstrating exactly what Jake meant. She stood in a training facility watching human and alien soldiers work together on combat simulations. The mixed teams were performing better than any pure human or pure alien units had ever managed. Luis Rodriguez called out instructions to a squad that included 2 humans, Azarian Crystal Warrior and Vorthik Biospecialist. "Remember, the Crystal tech gives us better shields, but the biosensors can detect enemies through walls. Use both advantages together." The Zarian warrior, who had chosen the name Blue because humans had trouble with Zarian pronunciation, coordinated with the Vorthik specialist called Tentacles to create a defensive formation that neither species could have managed alone. The human soldiers provided covering fire while their alien teammates used abilities that human technology could not match. "The integration is working better than we hoped," Amy reported to Jake later that day. "Our mixed teams are not just adding alien and human capabilities together. They are creating entirely new tactical possibilities that neither side had thought of before." But the real breakthrough was happening in Peter Walsh's laboratory. He and Karen Mills had been working with alien advisors to decode the deeper principles behind galactic technology. What they found changed everything humans thought they knew about the universe. All galactic technology is based on conflict. Peter explained to a group that included Jake Morrison, Amy Chen, and several alien scientists. Zarian crystal tech grows stronger through harmonic opposition. Vorthic biosystems evolve through competitive pressure. Keldon machines optimize through systematic elimination of weak components. Karen activated a holographic display showing alien technology schematics. Every alien race builds their tools around the idea that conflict makes things better. They literally cannot imagine technology based on cooperation instead of competition. Doc, the Vorthic biospecialist, gestured with several tentacles. This is why human modifications to our technology work so well. You are the first species to try building tools that get better through cooperation instead of conflict. The alien that Blue had brought from the Zarian prisoner group flickered with excited light patterns. Crystal technology responds to harmonic resonance. Human team thinking creates resonance patterns that we never achieve through competitive crystal singing. But while humans were learning to understand their former enemies were learning something even more important. They were learning what it felt like to be trusted and valued instead of feared and dominated. Vexel stood in a human school and watched children from 3 different species learn together. Human children learned Zarian mathematics while Zarian youth learned human art. A young Vorthek that had hatched from eggs left behind during the invasion was learning to read English while teaching human children how to sense bioelectric fields. In Zarian society, weakness is eliminated, Vexel told the human teacher, a woman named Lisa who treated him like a respected colleague instead of a former enemy. Young crystals who cannot sing the harmonic patterns correctly are shattered and their fragments used to strengthen others. Lisa looked horrified. That's terrible. What about crystals who are good at other things besides singing? There are no other things, Vexel said, his light patterns dim with old sadness. Zarian culture has only one measure of worth. Combat. Efficiency. Those who cannot fight are destroyed. But you are incredibly good at mathematics and engineering, Lisa said. And you are one of the best teachers I have ever worked with. Your people threw away abilities that are more valuable than fighting. For the first time in his existence, Vexel felt valued for something other than his ability to destroy enemies. The feeling was so strange and wonderful that his crystal body blazed with colors that had no names in Zarian language. On the hidden observation ship, Kexpree was having her own crisis of understanding. Her daily conversations with human teams had taught her things about galactic society that she had never questioned before. Field researcher Quindal was growing concerned about his junior observers' changing attitudes. Your reports are becoming too sympathetic to human perspectives, he told her during a formal review session. Remember that we are here to identify human weaknesses that can be exploited, not to admire their alien customs. Kexpree looked at her superior with new eyes. What if they do not have exploitable weaknesses? What if their way of thinking is actually better than ours? The question was so shocking that Quindal could not respond for several minutes. In hegemony society, questioning the superiority of their own methods was considered a form of mental illness. But Kexpree continued speaking. I have been studying human history through their data networks. They have fought terrible wars, but they always end with former enemies becoming friends. Their strongest alliances are with nations they once fought against. Their closest trading partners are former military rivals. That proves they are weak and inconsistent, Quindal said automatically. Does it? Kexpree asked. Or does it prove they are strong enough to change their minds when they find a better way? Look at what they have accomplished in just 2 years. 3 different alien races tried to conquer them, and all 3 are now working with them willingly. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Hegemony Command. Admiral Vormak, the most feared military commander in the galaxy, was being dispatched with a full war fleet to resolve the human problem permanently. The message included specific orders for the observation team. Continue monitoring until the fleet arrives. Identify all human military assets and defensive positions. Prepare targeting data for complete planetary sterilization. Kexpri stared at the orders and felt something break inside her. In a few weeks, the humans who had shown her kindness and trust would be murdered along with their former alien enemies, who had found new purpose in cooperation. Instead of conquest, she made another decision that violated every principle of hegemony. Military law. That night, she sent a coded warning to Jake Morrison. A war fleet is coming. 300 ships led by Admiral Vormak. He has never failed to destroy a target completely. You have maybe a month to prepare. Jake Morrison read the message and felt the weight of impossible responsibility settle on his shoulders. How could Earth defend against 300 ships when they had barely survived attacks by single fleets? But as he looked around the command center and saw humans and aliens working together with trust and friendship instead of fear and hatred, he realized something important. Earth's greatest weapon was not technology or military strength. It was the power to change minds and hearts. And if it had worked on their former enemies, maybe it could work on new ones too. The question was whether they would get a chance to try before Admiral Vormak decided to destroy them all. Admiral Vormak had destroyed 47 different species in his military career, and Earth was going to be number 48. He stood on the bridge of his flagship Absolute Dominion and watched the small blue planet grow larger on his screens. 300 ships of the Hegemony Warfleet followed behind him in perfect formation. The Admiral expected to find a fortress, world bristling with hidden weapons and desperate defenses. Instead, his sensors detected something that made no tactical sense. The humans had transformed their orbital space into a massive communications array. Every satellite, space station, and orbital platform was broadcasting on frequencies that his entire fleet could receive. "They are not defending," reported his tactical officer. "They appear to be trying to communicate with us." "Ignore all communications," Vormak ordered. "Begin targeting sequence for planetary bombardment." But even as his weapon systems powered up, the human broadcasts continued. The messages were not pleas for mercy or offers of surrender. They were invitations. Peter Walsh appeared on every screen in the Hegemony fleet. He wore simple civilian clothes and stood in what looked like a laboratory rather than a military command center. Behind him, humans and aliens worked together on projects that seemed to have nothing to do with warfare. "Welcome to our solar system," Peter said with a calm smile. "I am Ambassador Peter Walsh, speaking for the people of Earth and our friends from other worlds. We know you have come here expecting a battle, but we would like to offer you something better." Admiral Vormak watched with growing confusion as the human ambassador began showing images from Earth. Instead of military fortifications, the broadcast showed cities where multiple alien species lived and worked alongside humans. Former enemy. Soldiers teaching human children. Human doctors working with alien biospecialists to heal diseases that had plagued both species for generations. "We know you have been told that we are a threat that must be eliminated," Peter continued. "But we would like you to see what we have actually built here. Earth has become something new in galactic history. A place where former enemies choose to become friends." The broadcast switched to show Amy Chun leading a tour through New Geneva. The city that had been destroyed and rebuilt 3 times now sparkled with architecture that blended human engineering with alien design principles. Crystal spires from Zarian technology rose beside bioorganic structures grown using Vorthic methods. "This is Colonel Amy Chun," Peter's voice explained. 6 months ago, she was fighting against the beings who are now helping her design our defenses. Not because we forced them to help, but because they chose to help. Amy walked through a research facility where humans and aliens worked side by side. "This is where we study captured technology," she said, speaking directly to the hegemony fleet. "But we do not study it to build better weapons. We study it to understand how different types of thinking can work together." She stopped beside a workstation where Vexel was teaching a human engineer how to tune crystal resonance patterns. Vexel was a Zarian ship commander who tried to conquer our city. Now he is one of our most valued teachers and advisors. He chose to stay with us because we offered him something his own people never did. "What did you offer him?" Amy asked, speaking as if she expected an answer from the watching fleet. Vexel looked up from his work, and his crystal body flashed with warm colors. "They offered me the chance to build instead of destroy, to help instead of hurt, to be valued for my knowledge instead of feared for my weapons." The broadcast continued with more impossible scenes. Vorthic bioengineers who worked in human hospitals, saving lives of both humans and aliens. Keldon machine specialists who had reprogrammed their own combat systems to create tools for construction and healing instead of destruction. Admiral Vormak felt something he had never experienced in 200 years of military service: doubt. The humans were not showing him their weapons or defenses. They were showing him their former enemies who had chosen to become friends. "Sir, his communications officer said quietly, we are receiving direct messages from individual crew members throughout the fleet. The humans appear to be trying to establish personal communication with our personnel. On ship after ship, hegemony soldiers were receiving personalized messages from their human counterparts. Luis Rodriguez spoke directly to infantry units, sharing stories of battles fought alongside former enemies. Karen Mills addressed science officers, explaining discoveries that could only have been made through cooperation between species. But the most powerful messages came from the former enemies themselves. Doc, the Vorthic biospecialist, spoke to hegemony bioresearch teams about medical advances that had saved thousands of lives. Blue, the Zarian crystal warrior, demonstrated technology improvements that were only possible when crystal singing was used for harmony instead of destruction. I was a ship commander in the 47th Zarian battle fleet, Vexel said in a message directed specifically at hegemony military officers. I believe that strength came from eliminating weakness and that victory required the complete destruction of enemies. I was wrong. His crystal body showed complex light patterns that conveyed emotions no Zarian had ever expressed before. Humans showed me that real strength comes from helping others become stronger. That true victory means turning enemies into allies. That the greatest warriors are those who fight to protect rather than to destroy. Admiral Vormak watched his crew as they received these messages. For the first time in his career, he saw uncertainty in the faces of soldiers who had never questioned their orders. Some were asking questions he had never heard in military briefings. "What if there is another way?" one young officer whispered. "What if we do not have to destroy them?" another said quietly. The final broadcast came from Jake Morrison himself. He appeared on screen in his military uniform, but his expression was calm rather than defiant. Behind him stood representatives from every species that had ever attacked Earth, all of them now working together as friends and allies. "Admiral Vormak," Jake said, speaking directly to the fleet commander. "I know your orders are to destroy us. I know you have never failed to eliminate a target. But I want to offer you something that no target has ever offered before." Jake gestured to the mixed group of humans and aliens behind him. "We offer you the choice to see what we have built here, not as a military threat, but as proof that there is another way to live in this galaxy." The transmission showed one final image that stopped Admiral Vormak's heart. It was a memorial garden where the names of war dead from all species were carved in stone together. Human names beside Zarian light patterns beside Vorthic biosignatures. All honored equally as beings whose deaths had taught the survivors that war was not the only answer. "We trust you to make the right choice," Jake said simply. "Whatever you decide, we will not fire first. We believe that everyone deserves a chance to choose who they want to become." The transmission ended and silence filled the bridge of absolute dominion. Admiral Vormak stared at weapons panels that could reduce Earth to glowing slag in minutes. His orders were clear, and he had never disobeyed orders in his entire career. But for the first time in galactic history, a hegemony admiral faced enemies who trusted him to choose mercy over destruction. And that trust was more powerful than any weapon ever built. 3 days passed in silence while the hegemony war. Fleet held position above Earth. Admiral Vormak stood alone in his command chamber and stared at targeting displays that could end human civilization with a single order. His weapons were charged. His crews were ready, and his orders were clear. But he could not give the command to fire. The humans continued their patient broadcasts, but they had changed tactics. Instead of showing their achievements, they were now sharing simple human experiences with individual crew members throughout the fleet. Luis Rodriguez had started something he called friendship protocols, where humans talked to alien soldiers about everyday things that had nothing to do with war. On the heavy cruiser Sword of Vengeance, Commander Krixtal received a personal message from a human child named Bobby who lived in New Geneva. The boy was maybe 8 years old and spoke with a simple honesty that only children possessed. "My friend Blue taught me how to make light patterns with crystals," Bobby said, holding up a small Zarian crystal that sparkled in his hands. "He used to be a warrior, but now he helps us learn math because he says math is more beautiful than fighting." "Do you like math too?" Commander Krixtal had commanded warships for 50 years and had never been asked if he liked mathematics. The question was so unexpected that he found himself thinking about his answer. Before joining the military, he had been fascinated by stellar navigation and quantum mechanics. But hegemony culture only valued those skills as tools for better warfare. Similar conversations were happening throughout the fleet. Human musicians shared songs with alien communications officers. Human cooks sent recipes to alien food preparation specialists. Human parents showed pictures of their children playing with young aliens who had been born from captured enemy eggs or crystal fragments. On Earth, Caxpree had made her choice. She transported down from the observation ship and met face to face with the humans she had been spying on. Karen Mills greeted her at the landing site with the same warmth she showed to old friends. "Welcome to Earth," Karen said with a genuine smile. "We are so glad you decided to visit us in person." Caxpree's shifting light form trembled with emotions she had no names for. "I am supposed to be gathering intelligence for your destruction. My presence here is an act of treason against everything I have been taught. But you came anyway," Karen said gently. "That tells us more about who you really are than anything you were taught." They walked together through the memorial garden, where the names of war dead from all species were honored equally. Caxpree stopped beside a stone that bore hegemony symbols alongside human writing. "These are names of my people who died in previous attacks," she said with wonder. "You honor our dead even though we were your enemies." Karen nodded. "Everyone who dies in war deserves to be remembered. Death is too important to be wasted on hatred." The tour continued through areas that should have been classified military secrets. Human and alien engineers showed Caxpree defensive systems that were designed not to kill attackers but to disable their weapons and protect their crews. Medical facilities that were prepared to treat wounded enemies alongside wounded defenders. "This makes no strategic sense," Caxpree said as she watched human doctors training to treat hegemony physiology. "Why prepare to heal beings who are trying to kill you?" Because once we heal them, they stop trying to kill us, Amy Chun explained. She had joined the tour and was treating Kexpree like an honored guest rather than an enemy spy. Look around you. Every alien you see here started as an enemy. Now they are friends and partners. But the real revelation came when Kexpree met with Jake Morrison in his office. She expected interrogation or attempts to extract information about hegemony military capabilities. Instead, Jake asked her about herself. What did you want to become before you joined the military? He asked. The question hit Kexpree like a physical blow. No one had ever asked her about personal desires or individual dreams. Hegemony society had only one question: how can you serve the state? I wanted to study other cultures, she said quietly. I was fascinated by how different species developed different solutions to the same problems. But cultural research was considered frivolous unless it served military intelligence purposes. Jake leaned forward with interest. That's exactly what we need more of. Understanding how different ways of thinking can work together. Would you like to help us with that? You would trust me with important work, Kexpree asked. Even though I am supposed to be your enemy. You were never really our enemy, Jake said with conviction. You were just someone who had not been given a choice yet. Now you have a choice. Above Earth, Admiral Vormak was facing his own choice. Reports from throughout his fleet described crew members asking questions that had never been asked in hegemony history. Officers were requesting permission to study human cultural data. Engineers wanted to examine cooperative technology designs. Medical personnel were interested in healing techniques that worked across species lines. Most disturbing of all, some crew members were asking if they could volunteer to transport down to Earth to see the human society in person. In 200 years of military service, Vormak had never heard soldiers request permission to visit an enemy planet for peaceful purposes. The crisis reached its peak when Commander Zix Thara, his most trusted aide, came to him with an unprecedented request. Sir, I formally request permission to transport to the surface and meet with human representatives, she said. Vormak stared at his second-in-command with shock. You want to visit the enemy? I want to understand what we are being asked to destroy. Zix Thara replied. The broadcasts show things that should not be possible according to everything we know about interspecies relations. I need to see if they are real. And if they are real, Vormak asked quietly. Zix Thara met his eyes with steady resolve. Then we will have to decide if we are destroyers or if we can choose to become something better. The words hung in the air, between them like an undetonated weapon. For the first time in his career, Admiral Vormak was faced with the possibility that his enemy might be right and he might be wrong. That night, alone in his quarters, Vormak made a decision that violated every principle of hegemony military doctrine. He sent a coded message directly to Jake Morrison. I will meet with you, alone, no weapons, no guards. I want to understand what you are offering before I decide whether to destroy it. The response came back within an hour. We would be honored to meet with you. Come as our guest, not as our enemy. We trust you to keep your word. As Admiral Vormak prepared for a meeting that could change galactic history, he wondered if he was about to become another example of an enemy who chose to become a friend. The thought should have filled him with shame. Instead, for the first time in decades, it filled him with hope. Admiral Vormak transported down to Earth expecting to find a trap or a trick. Instead, he found himself standing in a garden where children from 5 different species played together while their parents watched with the contentment that only comes from knowing their children are safe and loved. Jake Morrison walked up to him wearing casual clothes instead of a military uniform. No guards, no weapons, no signs of the military paranoia that every other species showed when meeting with hegemony representatives. Just a man who had invited his enemy to see what he had built. "Welcome to Earth," Jake said with a smile that seemed genuinely happy. "Thank you for coming." I know this was not an easy decision. Vormak looked around at the peaceful scene and felt something crack inside his chest. "Where are your defenses, your weapons, your preparations for battle?" "You are looking at them," Jake replied. "Our defense is the choice we are offering you. Our weapon is the possibility that you might decide not to use yours." They walked through New Geneva together, past crystal spires that sparkled in the sunlight, and bioorganic buildings that seemed to breathe with life. Humans and aliens worked side by side on projects that had nothing to do with war: art, music, science, medicine, education. All the things that made life worth living instead of just surviving. "This is impossible," Vormak said as he watched a Zerion crystal being teaching human children how to sing harmonic patterns. "Conquered species do not cooperate willingly. They rebel or they submit, but they do not integrate. They do when you give them a choice," Jake said. "When you treat them as people instead of resources. When you ask them what they want to become instead of telling them what they must do." The tour continued through facilities that should have been military secrets. Research labs where alien and human scientists worked together on technologies that neither species could have developed alone. Medical centers where alien biospecialists used their natural abilities to heal both human and alien patients. Schools where children learned that differences between species were sources of strength rather than reasons for conflict. But the moment that changed everything came when they visited the Memorial Garden. Vormak stood before stones that honored the war dead from every species that had ever attacked Earth. His own people's names were carved there in traditional hegemony script alongside human names and alien symbols. "You honor our dead," he said with wonder, "even though we were your enemies." "They were not our enemies," Karen Mills said as she joined them. "They were people who were following orders just like you are. Their deaths taught us that war wastes the most precious thing in the universe." "What is that?" Vormak asked. "The chance to discover what amazing things people can accomplish when they work together instead of fighting each other," Karen replied as if to demonstrate her point. A group of mixed-species engineers walked by carrying plans for a new type of starship. The design combined hegemony power systems with human durability concepts and alien navigation technology. It was not a warship, but an exploration vessel designed to carry mixed crews on peaceful missions to distant stars. "We want to explore the galaxy," Amy Chun explained as she showed Vormak the ship designs, "but not to conquer it. We want to meet other species and offer them the same choice we are offering you." "What choice is that?" Vormak asked. Though he was beginning to understand, Jake Morrison stood beside the memorial stones and looked up at the stars where 300 hegemony warships waited for their admiral's decision. The choice to build instead of destroy, to help instead of hurt, to discover what you can become instead of staying trapped by what you have always been. The admiral stared at the peaceful scene around him and felt the weight of impossible responsibility. He had the power to destroy all of this with a single command to his fleet. Or he had the power to choose something that no hegemony commander had ever chosen before. "If I stand down," he said slowly, "if I refuse to destroy you, what happens to my people who want to experience this new way of living?" "They become our friends," Jake said simply, "just like everyone else who chose to stay. And if I cannot convince my superiors that this is better than conquest, then we keep trying." Amy said, "We keep showing everyone we meet that former enemies can become friends. We keep proving that cooperation is stronger than competition. We keep offering the choice until enough people choose differently that the old ways cannot continue." Admiral Vormak made the decision that changed galactic history. He did not just stand down from his attack on Earth. He formally requested asylum for any member of his fleet who wanted to experience human society. Over half his crew requested transfer to Earth's protection, not as conquered subjects, but as willing converts to humanity's philosophy of redemption over destruction. The transformation spread faster than anyone had imagined possible. Within months, Amy Chun was leading mixed human-alien crews on exploration missions to species on the galactic rim who had been hiding from hegemony expansion. Instead of conquest fleets, they sent friendship delegations offering trade, cultural exchange, and mutual defense against those who still chose warfare over cooperation. Kexpree became the first alien to receive human citizenship through voluntary adoption rather than conquest or treaty. She established the Galactic Redemption Council, dedicated to offering alternatives to the cycle of violence that had defined interspecies relations for millennia. Peter Walsh's breakthrough in communication technology allowed instant translation between any known species, making diplomacy possible even with races that had never met before. Karen Mill's medical advances, enhanced by alien knowledge, began healing wounds between species that had been fighting for centuries. Luis Rodriguez started training programs that taught former enemies how to work together effectively. His integration protocols became the standard method for helping species transition from conflict to cooperation throughout the galaxy. The revolution reached its peak when Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral of the United Species Defense Force, stood before the Galactic Council in what had once been the hegemony capital. Representatives from dozens of species worked together on challenges that had seemed impossible when they were enemies. Stellar engineering projects that required the combined knowledge of multiple races. Medical research that used the unique abilities of different species to cure diseases that had plagued the galaxy for ages. Artistic collaborations that created beauty beyond what any single culture could achieve alone. Humanity's greatest weapon was never our technology or our military strength, Peter Walsh told the assembled delegates. It was our belief that enemies could become friends, that conquest could be replaced by cooperation, that even the most hardened warrior could choose a different path when offered genuine hope for something better. The final scene took place in the gardens of New Geneva, now expanded into a vast park where families from across the galaxy came to live and work together. Human children played alongside young aliens while their parents, former enemies who had found a better way, watched with the peace that comes from choosing love over fear. Admiral Vormak sat on a bench beside Jake Morrison and watched the sunset paint the sky in colors that seemed brighter somehow. Around them, the sounds of laughter and friendship filled the air in dozens of different languages and communication methods. "Do you ever regret not destroying us when you had the chance?" Jake asked with a smile. Vormak looked at the peaceful scene around them and felt something he had never experienced in his centuries of conquest. Complete contentment with a choice well made. "Never," he said. "You gave me something I never knew I wanted. You gave me the chance to build instead of destroy, to help instead of hurt, to discover who I could become instead of staying trapped by who I had always been." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they shone down on a galaxy where humanity's greatest weapon continued to spread from world to world, one transformed heart at a time, the weapon that conquered through kindness, that won through trust, and that proved once and for all that everyone deserves a second chance to choose who they want to become.